It is day 21 of the Russian-Ukrainian crisis, and this is already roiling the global market and, of course, upending the global geopolitics. Here in Kenya, we've started to feel the impact of this crisis. Only 2 days ago, fuel prices went up for the first time since October this year by 5 shillings. And analysts are warning that we haven't seen the worst yet. Fuel prices are likely to skyrocket and go out of the roof. The question is this: how bad will the situation get? And still, because of the impact of what we are having in the Far East, wheat prices have continued to appreciate, and now a 2 kg packet of wheat flour is now retailing at 190 shillings. Oh dear, up from 155 shillings 3 weeks ago. This is likely to spiral out of control, bearing in mind that Russia and Ukraine are major producers of wheat in the world. Good morning. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. This is the only channel where you can get a dose of geopolitics and, of course, a feeling of what is happening here in Kenya. It's Biz Check, and you know for sure that our reporters are spread around the country, and we'll be linking up with them to give us the latest from where they are. My name is Kimani, and also on this program, we shall be having some very interesting conversation around coffee. That's right. You know that the government has accelerated reforms in the coffee subsector, and farmers are starting to bear fruit. I'll be joined by one person who is in charge of this reform agenda. And then later on, we shall be discussing the impact of innovation on small, medium enterprises in Kenya. Some very interesting facts is about 80% of all businesses in Kenya are considered to be SMEs, and they employ almost 90% of Kenyan workforce. That's quite a significant component of the Kenyan economy. So we'll be looking at how innovation is likely to drive their growth going forward, because if you do not innovate, you are surely going to perish. This is Biz Check. Let's first of all go to the interview. Very good. You know that, Kenya was once a major producer of coffee in the world. And actually, in 1989, during what was referred to as the coffee boom era, Kenya exported about 128,000 metric tons of the black gold to the world, becoming a major earner of forex in the Republic of Kenya. However, the sector has gone through what we call booms and busts, and today the country at best can only produce about 40,000 metric tons annually. Well, this has been as a result of complicated web of cartels and, of course, falling global prices of coffee. And this has somehow dampened the spirit of coffee farmers in Kenya, because as we stand now, statistics will tell you that about the average age of a Kenyan coffee farmer is about 60 years. There are serious efforts that are geared towards ensuring that young people embrace coffee farming in this country, because ultimately they are the future of coffee farming in this country. And we saw in 2016, President Uhuru Kenyatta set up a coffee task force that was supposed to guide on the way forward. And they came up with a report that was supposed to be implemented, and the question is, has this report seen the light of the day, bearing in mind that as a country we have a reputation of coming up with some very beautiful, well-articulated documents that do not see the end of the light. This morning I'm joined by Professor Joseph Kieyah. He's the chairperson of the Coffee Subsector Reforms Implementation Standing Committee that was appointed by President Uhuru Kenyatta in 2016 to drive the coffee reform agenda. He's also part of, and this committee is domiciled at the Executive Office of the President. So you can imagine they have the ear and the eye of the highest office on the land. So they don't have any excuse not to deliver. Kieyah, thank you very much indeed for finding time to be with us. And of course, this is not the first time that we are chatting with you. But first of all, I want to take you back to the year 2016, when, you were given this tough assignment, of steering the coffee fortunes in this country. When you look back, what would you say has been one of your biggest achievements yet?
First of all, Brian, thank you for having me here. And just to come and discuss this important issue. Obviously, the credit goes to the president. As you rightly stated, he appointed task force in 2016, and basically with a mandate to conduct a rigorous value chain analysis, basically to find out, which is almost like a paradox. You have a Kenyan coffee fetching premium prices globally, but that prices are not reflected to the farmer down there. So what we did, we just, in a very simple way, followed the coffee from the seed all the way up to green coffee, and then also followed the money. Answering your question in terms of what we have really done is we have been able to lay out a legal framework that is embedded or embodied in two pieces of regulations: the Coffee General Regulation, Crop Act, Coffee General Regulation 2019, and Capital Market Coffee Exchange Regulation 2020. And basically those two pieces of legislation is what actually has created a conducive environment to be able to, for the Cape Kenyan Coffee Union, to be able to sell their coffee directly. These reforms, unlike the reforms you have done in the past, are the two key elements. The first one is these reforms are farmer-centric. The legal principle underlying these reforms is that coffee, the property rights of coffee belongs to the farmer. So, in a nutshell, the farmer should be allowed to do whatever they want to do with their coffee. The other important principle, actually constitutional principle, is that agriculture has been involved. So meaning that the county government should also have a major role in trying to implement this regulation.
Very good. I want first of all you to hold your thoughts on that issue. Let's come back to the studio where our conversation revolves around the coffee reforms in the country, and we are in the hands of the Coffee Subsector Reform Implementation Standing Committee Chair, Professor Joseph Kieyah, who is domiciled at the Executive Office of the President. Kieyah, before we listen to the Deputy President, you are talking about what you would consider to be your major achievement so far. You've talked about the implementation of two regulations. Okay. And before we even go into those regulations, I want to hear from you. When you followed coffee from the seed to the coffee cup, what did you discover there? What was the challenge?
We found coffee is a little bit more complicated because you have the production side, there's the processing part, and also the milling part. Obviously, at the lower part where coffee farmers are located, we found high cost of production. The inputs were very high, the fertilizers, chemicals, and what have you.
Farm inputs.
Farm input, and again, putting more in an economic term, the input market was very inefficient for whatever reasons. A case in point is that, the government every year used to give fertilizer subsidy, but the coffee farmer never really enjoyed that
the subsidies.
That subsidy too. Then from there we went to the processing. The processing is where the cooperative societies mainly assist the farmers, because you see, especially the small scale farmers, when they harvest their coffee, they give to the cooperative. The coffee is processed, and then from there the coffee is milled. At the processing part, we found governance issue within the cooperative society, which were very, very, very serious. Then from there, we also now went...
And governance issues will be like mismanagement, corruption, conflict of interest.
And also the fact that the farmer didn't have a way of holding the officials to account. Then from there, we went to the meeting. The meaning we found in cases where there is a lot of exaggeration of milling losses. And mind you, Brian, that when the farmer take their coffee to the cooperative societies, that was it. They have no idea the quality of coffee. They have no idea even how that coffee will be priced. So they're in the dark. So when you go now to the meeting part, again, there was a lot of exaggeration of milling losses. The grading was not actually, because ideally, when your coffee is milled, you're supposed to be there. You see the coffee milled, it is categorized different grades, and then it's classified. Then from there, the coffee is usually given to the marketer, who takes the coffee now to the auction. Mind you, again, what we found, really shocking. There is a symbiotic relationship between the miller, the marketer, and the buyer. So meaning, when you go to the auction, there was, we can conjecture there was a lot of instant trading. So meaning that the prices that the auction is, coming up with, it's not efficient. Because ideally, from an economic time, when you have so many buyers and so many sellers, you're able to get an equilibrium price. So, but in a nutshell, the two main source of problem that we thought that needed to be fixed very quickly, it is on that trading part, and as well as the governance issue in the cooperatives. So in a nutshell, we've again a lot of inefficiency in the governance, corporate societies, and also inefficient trading, which there were no transparency, and so a lot of inside trading that was taking place.
So
and then also the other problem, which I think is also very important to highlight, is that once the coffee is paid, it took 6 to 8 months before the farmer is paid.
How did you manage to deal with the issue of inputs, farm inputs, bearing in mind that even as we speak now, the cost of fertilizer has almost doubled from the year 2016, when a 50 kg bag of fertilizer was going for 2,800. Now the same is going for almost 7,000 shillings.
Yeah. Well, we provided that recommendation that we had recommended to the government that they need to create maybe like a 3-year subsidy program where they will assist the farmer with inputs, so that at least the farmer can be able to break even. Because I think also subsidy, you don't want to make a subsidy a long time, because sometimes it also distorts the market. But we're saying because of those high cost of fertilizer, labor costs also increasing, we had recommended as part of the recommendation that the government land a 3-year subsidy focusing on the production.
Was that embraced?
That one is still in the process. There's some element of it that is there's a project that is being funded by the World Bank, which actually try to address those issues. But I think our recommendation, we need a broader, a more intensive subsidy program. For I think, and again, our threshold was at least allow the farmer to break even, and then once they do that, we thought maybe the market could be to stabilize.
So, is it then proper to say that the issue of farm input has not been dealt with accordingly?
Well, I think I won't say that, but I think there is an effort for the government to do that. I can tell you there is a project already that is being funded in the World Bank that is addressing that aspect of inputs market.
How is it being addressed?
Well, I think what I think they have done, they have I think they put about I think it was about 1.4 billion shillings, and what they have done, they have picked pilot counties to start providing rehabilitation of the factories. Some of these factories are very archaic. We don't have any modern technology. Some of them doesn't have. They're not connected with the grid. But again, like I'm saying, it's on a smaller scale. But we had suggested that the government should be able to look into that, and I think, my hope, I think that would be probably the coming government should be able to address that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. From your proposal, I mean, if your proposals on farm subsidies and farm inputs is not addressed, to what extent is this likely to have on the final cost to the farmer?
Well, I think the good thing, Brian, is that also, remember these prices is about the supply forces and the demand forces. What we're having now, we are very lucky. This reform have coincided with a frost that destroyed about 30% of the Brazilian coffee, as well as the Colombian. And those are our competitors. And
of course, Brazil is a bigger producer.
Precisely. So what is also happening is that because the prices we are getting, they're able to cover the production cost. So in a nutshell, we might not, in the long run, maybe the guy might not be need to do any subsidy, because the prices goes up, they're able to recover their input cost. I can give you a case in point. To produce 1 kilo of chill of coffee costs about 35 shillings, right? What Kieyah got was about 100, and the highest was 122. So there's almost 80%. I mean, 87 shillings that the farmer is drawing.
Profit margins.
Yeah, profit margin. So again, the way the market works, we might not even need the government might not need to interject the subsidy program. What we need to do though is to really try to sort out these inefficiencies. And basically that's what we have done. Sort out this inefficiency, and that could be able again allow the farmer, even production costs notwithstanding, they'll be able to make money.
And that is domiciled on hope.
Not necessarily,
but hope is a bad strategy in business.
I mean, we have statistics. I'll just give you some statistics right now. Kieyah, they sold. Their highest was 100 shillings. Each farmer will be paid 122 shillings per kilo of cherry. They will have spent about 35. Let's even take for hypothetical case. Suppose even the cost of production goes up to 60. They'll still be making, a profit.
They still have 100% profit
Precisely. In fact, if I can put it more succinctly, Brian, what we did is that we focus on the supply side. In fact, our reforms are more of a supply side, okay? Trying to see where can we reduce the production cost, okay? So that the farmer, without necessarily worrying about the price, because the prices are, set by the global forces. So what you're saying is that, again, if we sort out this inefficiency, okay, the trading, the governance issue, maybe you might not even, the government doesn't need to do any
you don't even need the subsidy program.
Precisely, yeah.
So how did you manage to, or have you managed to do a decoupling of, this conflict of interest whereby you have the millers being the buyers and being the marketers?
Yeah. Let me tell you the beauty about, the coffee reform. For the first time, you have a task force that was established by the president, nested within the executive office of the president. But then the same team, okay, was instructed or appointed to implement the same recommendations. This has never happened. Because in most cases, you have someone doing the task force report. That report is given someone to implement.
In short, you are told, you made your bed, now lie on it.
Lie on it. And what that has done, and I tell you this, the reason why I become very successful, is that we're able now to really, I'm the person actually who thought through these issues, and I know the philosophical basis of why we are doing this. And so that had made it, very easy. And I'm sure even achieving those regulation framework, Brian, this kind is very difficult. I required a thorough conversation with the county government, a very intensive consultation with the member of parliament, And I can tell you, if we succeed, coffee will be a case study for other products to follow.
Let me ask you this. I mean, now you're talking about from 2016 to 2022.
Correct.
That's almost 6 years down the line.
Yeah.
You've mentioned, a number of successes within the value chain.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the drawbacks.
Sure.
What would you say has been one of your biggest drawbacks yet?
Okay, the drawback obviously is, and Brian, it took us almost 30 years to get where we are. The coffee problems, I think you try to highlight them. Everybody knows. We used to do 130,000 metric tons in late 1980s. Now we are doing about 40 or less than that, 40,000. So it's been a very protracted, mess. So again, you would also expect a little bit, reforming and getting a policy done. It might take a little bit more time. So one of the shortcomings that I think we have seen is also that the fact the farmers are not. We have not done thorough public participation for the farmer to understand some of the benefits that are really coming up. The other thing is that I think, like to mention, we had about 8 pillars of recommendation. The first one was the legal reform. The second one was subsidy that I talked about. Then the third one was cherry fund to support the farmer in order to mitigate their cash flow problems. The other one was
and 3 billion shillings was allocated for that.
And then we had also recommended the structuring of the Nairobi Coffee Exchange to become an exchange so that efficient trading can take place.
Let's first of all talk about the 3, and I'm very keen on the
3 billion.
The 3. I mean the number 2 and 3.
Okay.
The cherry fund, and I know 3 billion shillings was allocated,
yes.
To farmers.
Yes.
But the last time we had a conversation with you, you were still having challenges, with disbursing these funds to farmers.
Correct. Yeah.
Have you managed to have a breakthrough in regard to that?
I would say not yet, because I think we're about 2.7 billion still in the bank.
So about 300 million shillings has been given out.
Yes, so meaning that I think there are some challenges that I think...
That's only 10%.
It's only 10%, and I agree. I mean, that's some of the challenges that I think we need to rethink, because the premise on how this cherry fund was supposed to be dispersed, there are 2 key elements. The first one is efficient disbursement. It was supposed to be given to the farmer, okay, who has coffee, okay, and it didn't matter where they would take their coffee. The second aspect was recovered. That money was supposed to be covered the same year. Okay, so
you borrow this year,
yes,
and the recovery is also expected to repay
because
this
it was a revolving fund. You have to give them this money because the whole idea was to caution the farmer, okay, before their coffee is bought. Then once coffee is bought by year, that money is again returned. So those some of the teething probably have not been sorted out. But I agree, it's one of the again probably shortcoming that we are not able to dispense that money as quickly as we can. But again, this being overtaken by event. You can see again the farmers who have been able to sell their coffee and sell them directly, like Kieyah, they will get their money quickly and they will go back to the farm. They might not need it to borrow because their money is already, because what was happening, and the reason why we had recommended cherry fund, it is this delay of the payments, which was ranges between 6 to 8 months. But with now, if you can sell directly, you don't have to borrow money, to meet your, short-term.
But you still admit or agree to the fact that, not all farmers are like the Kieyah. You still have a significant portion of Kenyan coffee farmers who still would thrive and still need the cherry fund. So what is your proposal going forward to ensure that because, the fact that you have distributed only 10% of the 3 billion shillings, that is a poor showing, definitely. Yeah. So how do you plan to scale up these numbers?
Well, I think there's some effort that have been put in place. One of the things that I think also explain why Cooperative have been very successful is that we encourage, union to integrate vertically, meaning that if you can process and make your own coffee, then you can be able to now sell your coffee directly, and that even borrowing become much easy. Because you would also agree with me, dispersing cherry fund, directly without going the union can be a challenge. But I think your point was taken, and my committee is trying to really figure out within the collaboration in the ministry on how these funds can be expanded in such a way that the farmer can be able to really enjoy.
So when you talk to the unions, what challenges are going through in trying to put their house in order in order for them to tap into this 3 billion shillings cherry fund?
I can tell you they have made a lot of progress. Right now, we are about almost 7 to 8 unions who have integrated vertically, meaning that they can process the media on coffee, and quite frankly, they also establish brokerage companies that can sell their coffee through the auction. So that again is on process. We have about maybe 12 union nationally, and the one I'll tell you about, because you have Meru, Muranga, Machakos, Embu, Kipkerion, Mount Elgon, Bugoma, and Gusii. Okay, and again, most of them have integrated vertically. Yes.
Let's now then focus on the other issue, the issue of the Nairobi Coffee Exchange.
Correct.
I know you faced a significant pushback when you tried to reform the exchange and bring in transparent management.
Sure.
Have you managed to deal with that element of pushback?
Well, I think we have, to some extent, we're able to upgrade. The Nairobi Coffee case now have modern technology to be able to trade online. But as we speak, the Nairobi Coffee Exchange didn't have any legal entity when it was created, and we had recommended in our task force that they need to become an exchange that will now be regulated by the Capital Market Authority. Obviously, again, there's we have the law in place, and the Nairobi Coffee Exchange is trying to really work the modality on how they will be able now to convert, because ideally, according to the law, they are supposed to be a private entity, not a government entity. The only threshold I think the government is supposed to is around 10% of the share ownership. The rest is supposed to be private. So again, Brian, that is again in place. Obviously, some of these reforms take a little bit of time before they take the traction, but they're in the course of actually, because again they also don't have a choice. They have to abide with the law, because the law provides that the Nairobi Exchange is supposed to be an exchange which will be regulated by the CMA, and they have been given
CMA.
Yeah, they have been given. Yeah, they have been given preliminary,
operating license.
Awaiting again,
before they can put their house in order.
Yeah, before they put their house in order.
I know. You can correct me on this, but I know about 3 companies. Have been 3 brokerages have been given licenses by the CMA.
Correct.
To start, trading at the NCE.
Yes.
Is this number enough, or we still need more?
Well, I think they have actually. I think about 6 now.
Or 6?
Yes, they have. I know that for sure in Seneco that the CMA has licensed about. I think about 6 in total now. Yes.
How many more do you think we need?
Well, I think the whole argument that we made when we are conceptualizing things is that the coffee belongs to the farmer, so the farmer should be allowed to. In our reforms, we removed the marketing license, okay, and we argued that what you need is the brokerage firm, because the role of a broker is to bring a buyer, right? They pay their commission and they walk away. The original regime was the marketer is given the coffee and he's also given the money. So what we recommend is of all 12 union to have a brokerage. And again, the role of the brokerage is to be able to sell in the auction. There are two ways that coffee is sold. It's through the auction and also through the direct sales. So we had again, but I think we have to be under the previous discussion, the CMA, because you also don't have too many brokerage firm, because they make it marketing a little bit of increase the transaction cost of doing it. But we are thinking maybe about maybe 10 or 12 will be good. And also, by the way, there are other private companies who also applied for brokerage license. Yes.
I'm happy that you mentioned about 8 unions,
yes.
8 coffee unions.
Yes.
And among the 8 unions, I didn't hear any union that is from this central region of Kenya.
No, they're there.
How many are they?
There's Machakos. There's
Machakos would be classified as part of Mount Kenya. Or?
Yeah, there's Meru. Okay, actually Meru has always been trading. There is Muranga. There is Embu in the process of working on that. I know Kiambu has also started putting their house together.
Actually, that's where I was coming from. I mean, we know for sure that, and I'm born and brought up in Kiambu County, and I was brought up on coffee. Sorry, and there has been this big competition between coffee, real estate, and dairy farming.
Correct.
And I can tell this as a fact, because that is where I come from, and I always got there. I haven't seen such a strong, deliberate effort, to try and revive coffee farming in Kiambu County. And I'll tell you for sure that I was born and brought up in coffee estates, spanning thousands of acres. We're talking about the acres of this country.
Okay.
But today, these places are now being subdivided to become real estate. Do we have a deliberate effort, to persuade farmers, to go back into coffee farming? Because ultimately, the shilling is the king.
Precisely. But I think also, Brian, using economic analysis, growing coffee is a private enterprise. It's not a government project. And that is, determined by how much the farmer is getting. If he doesn't get good pay from coffee and he can get someone to come and buy the land and do a real estate, that's a personal decision they have to make.
Then are you fighting a losing battle? Because you do not see a situation whereby coffee farming is likely to be more lucrative than the real estate industry.
Well, it's picking up, and I think, by the way, even Kiambu, with all these problems, we are still 70% of coffee come from Kiambu, notwithstanding all
despite all the challenges.
The challenge that you're talking about.
But for how long can that situation?
Well, again, part of all is the pressure we're getting from the expansion of Nairobi, and you're seeing the real estate has really skyrocketed. So what we just need to do, and the greater incentive, is to make sure the farmer is paid well. And the other thing, Brian, which I think is now explained why the government, the county government, national government, has an interest on it, is that our coffee is a gold. We still, even with all this problem, we're still fetching 10% premium above global prices. And this is coming as a result of where we are. This is God-given. The geographical location is what gave us who we are. It can never be replicated anywhere in the world. In fact, if I can put it more succinctly, we produce Mercedes, but we market as a tuk-tuk. So there's an effort, there's an economic effort one can make. We can make a lot of money as a country, zoning part of part of Kiambu as a coffee region, and that will sort the problem that you are mentioning about the real estate.
So let's go back to the 1990s and early, and 70s and 80s, and coffee was a protected crop in this country. You needed the license of from the government to uproot, your coffee. But today, if you drive on the scenic roads of Kiambu County, on your way to Gatundu, on your way to Kiganjo, You know, and I still have, you know, those beautiful memories, you know, of going through those lush green coffee estates with the huge sprinklers, you know, watering the coffee. Today you go there and the only thing you see are mice on it, you know, coming up, which for me is such an ugly picture that I have, you know, I must admit. Because I'm also worried about the future generation. They will not be able to enjoy those lush greens and those scenic views that we used to enjoy, you know, going about our business there. So are we looking at a situation whereby we are likely to go back to the era of protecting the coffee crop?
Well, I think, rightly stated, one of the, and I hear what you're saying, O'Brien, but you see now one of the fundamental things about our country and the uniqueness of our country, you know, land is privately owned. It's a private entity. And if a piece of land, I've all the right to decide what I will do with it. It's not the government's responsibility. But the broader view of saying these are special lands, these are special agricultural land we need to safeguard. Okay?
Exactly.
There has to be a broader conversation, either national and at the county level. Then we can say, there's a solution, and which is providing the law. We can zone it. In all this region, the only thing you can do is coffee. And that what it does is also increase the premium of the land, you know, and the return of the coffee. But what you know, some of the phenomena that we have been experiencing in this country is that the regulations, the private interests have been moving faster than the national interest. Even like you can see the construction, like a town like, you know, Ruaka, you know, where the planning is not there, and put all kinds of absurdly. And what's going to happen is we'll be very expensive coming back, trying out to lead a line. But you see, that's the reality we are having. But your point is well taken, and a conversation need to start that we need this geographical location is a God given.
Exactly.
And we can make a rational use as a country. Let's zone this land for this agricultural land, and then construction of housing can be done in areas which are not as productive as Kiambu. But again, that's a conversation I think probably we need to start. There's it's also tied to the land reforms that I think you know, that have been going on. But your point is well taken, and it's also, as a national government, there is an interest to protect that land because of we produce coffee here because of.
You cannot take the geographical location of coffee growing zone and you plant it
precisely. Although there are new regions coming, particularly you know, in the Rift Valley, but you see the highland, you know, around Mount Kenya, that's where the top coffee, you know, Kieyah,
what used to be called the White Highland.
The White Highland, you know. And again, for me, that's a discussion we need to really have, for the same reason you have really expressed. But at the same time, you cannot tell a farmer to stop pursuing other private interest, if the coffee is not, you know, bearing return. And again, like I mentioned to you, we have tried to sort out the inefficiency along the value chain, and it seems to be working. Because if most of the farmer in Gatundu and other places, they have been paid over 100 shillings, which is a remarkable achievement. So in a way, it should that should start, you know, steering the the demand of, the supply of coffee. But I think again the other thing that's already meeting in Central is also our land are becoming very small. So what we need to focus on is not necessarily increasing the acreage, but I think the yield, productivity per tree. We are doing on average about 2 kilos per tree.
We used to do 20.
It can even go to 30, even 30 for that matter. But again, that brand, the best incentive is to make sure the prices are good and the farmers are.
You see, the fact of the matter is, we should never get to a point whereby O'Brien's personal interest is greater than the national interest of this country. Because at the end of the day, I can never be bigger than this country that we call Kenya. Yeah. And my interest should never be allowed, to be bigger than the national interest of this country. Because at the end of the day, we, the present and the current generation, we have oath the authority and oath the moral obligation to safeguard this country for the future generations. So when you talk about, zoning some areas, this is now the government coming in and saying, now look here, this area is reserved for coffee.
Sure.
Because we also want the generation that will come 100 years after us, when we are long gone, to also enjoy the lush greens, of coffee plantations and tea plantations and so much. So where do we start that conversation now?
Well, again, it is a conversation, and you are literally absolutely right. One of the strengths of Kenya is that this robust, property rights ownership. If you look at the whole country, about 20% is our land is owned privately, 13 is about government land, about 67 is what you used to call the communal land. And what has made Kenya so unique, it is that recognition of private ownership. But I agree with you, Brian, is that we have to force the individuals to internalize the costs they are creating to the soil, meaning that somebody gets there, he had a piece of land in Kiambu, he sold at a very high price, get his money put in his pocket, but he's creating an externality, meaning that the land that he had maybe grown for food or for whatever is taken away. Yeah. So what you need to do is to tell them, we will still allow you to keep your land, but we will restrict what, and that is provided in the constitution.
But for the government to do this, then the issue of pricing, the issue of productivity must be addressed. Because yes, this is my land,
yes,
but I'm not going to starve and kill myself, and my family, simply because I want to keep this coffee for future generations.
Yes, yeah.
And that's the reason why you're in office with your team. So going forward, which other issue do you think is going to be addressed, is likely to be addressed, that is going to be a game changer in the coffee industry?
The other thing, and you alluded to in your introduction, comment, it is, and you're absolutely right, the average of coffee farmer in this country is about 6 years of age. So for future sustainability, the youth has to get in part of the value chain. They got to get involved.
Do they want to?
Well, again, I think we have a responsibility as a country to give them incentive. You don't have necessarily to be a coffee farmer. You can be a barista, you can, a case in point I would like to highlight here is that we only consume 5% of our coffee.
And 95 is exported.
95 is exported. And there is no way you go to some of these major hotels. They don't have the Kenyan coffee at all. We grow coffee and you walk, some of the big hotels, the type of coffee you're getting, it's very, very bad. But we also need to start consuming our own coffee. You talk about the Ukraine and Russian, conflict. Obviously, the shillings will be affected. And I can tell you, if there's an event happening internationally, because our coffee is, all of it is exported, we tend to be very vulnerable to these capricious exogenous forces, globally. Mm-hmm. Okay? So we need to start consuming. You see, if you compare us with Ethiopia consumes almost half of their own coffee. Mm-hmm. So, and they're shielded from this, price volatility. So now I appeal the young people, right? Those with a lot of entrepreneurial skills, to really start thinking, how do you start domestic consumption? We need to start consuming our own coffee. And there's a lot of good health attribute of coffee that most of us don't know. Studies have been done in the US that draw a direct correlation between consumption of coffee and longevity.
But let me ask you this,
and you've been to the US and you know it.
Well, definitely, and I know we have talked really about deepening the consumption of coffee in this country. Yes. And truth to be told, 70% of Kenyan coffee is grown by small-scale farmers.
Yes, true.
Who are about 700,000 in numbers.
Yes, yes.
But the same farmers cannot afford a cup of tea at, one of these upmarket restaurants in Nairobi. Yeah. And I'm also sure that you have been to the US, yes, and gone to Starbucks, whereby a cup of cappuccino will cost you about $2.99. That's almost 350 shillings.
Correct.
So how do we make coffee, affordable even to small-scale farmers?
Well, I think what I'm saying is again appealing to the youthful entrepreneurship ingenuity. Okay. By the way, not all our coffee are priced at the same level, and we can make a very cautious decision.
They are graded.
We sell the premium. Okay. The lower grades can be consumed here. And you can start because you want to try to make coffee as a substitute of tea, and it can be done. So it's doable. And I've seen. In fact, I visited a coffee shop the other day owned by a very young Kenyan, and it was really fascinating. And what he told me supplied him that he's still depending on foreigners for roasting, and he's here in Kenya. And I was asking, why can't you roast your own coffee? And you are provided under the law, we have allowed local roasters to buy coffee and roast it here.
You see, the fact that, when you walk to many restaurants these days, and especially here in Nairobi, in Mombasa and Kisumu, you find restaurants that are having baristas, okay, whose expertise is how to blend coffee and make the best coffee that you can enjoy. But that is at a very premium scale.
Yes.
But still at the farming level, we still need young people because at the age of 60, there's nothing much that you can do. Your productivity is still 60% below your capacity. So how do we also encourage young people to put on the gumboots and go back to the farmland?
Again, it's very simple, Brian. Pay them nicely.
Do they want to get dirty?
No. I don't buy that argument. It's because, it's the power of you show me the money. You tell me a farmer like the Cape Kenyan farmer, and he's making the 7. Do you need to be convinced that to go back to the farm compared to any other job you work? It's about the money, my friend.
But can you also start a deliberate campaign, of branding, our coffee and the coffee value chain? Because the picture that we have of, coffee farmer in Kenya is an old person in gumboots, and a dusty coat or torn coat, picking coffee. Can we? How do we give that image, a youthful image, a progressive image, a futuristic image of a young person?
Yeah, I totally, Brian, I think that to me would capture some of the activities and effort we need to do within this pillar of the youth participation. We have, as a government, to provide those incentives, but ultimately, it's their responsibility. The only thing the government can do is to create a conducive environment, make sure they sort out the production issues, they sort out the inefficiencies along the coffee value chain, and then the coffee start paying. I can tell you for now, the demand for seedlings has quadrupled.
Coffee.
Everybody wanna go to the coffee. And I know a case in point in places like Moranga and where most of friends are calling me that I'm not trying to look for coffee, but I can't even get the seedling. So that man has strategy going on. What we need to worry about, Brian, is that one of the uniqueness about coffee, and it's all commodities, and this problem faces developing countries, is that the coffee is grown here, but is consumed in somewhere else. Okay. So when the prices change, coffee demand as well as supply is price inelastic. Because when the prices goes up, you're not gonna uproot your coffee. You're still gonna go and harvest it. So what the government need to worry is how do we mitigate these variation when the prices goes up or go down, given the fact that it is usually very difficult for a farmer to adjust. But in my opinion, and I gave Dr. Foskari, is that this has to be, coffee is a private good. Okay, the farmer should be given as much, discretion they want. The conversation you're talking about, that's a more conversation about land reforms, which again, I know that we had discussion on this with the governor of Kiambu. Again, trying to think about this zoning issue. It's provided in the law, right? In the constitution, you enjoy your property rights, but the government has a role to regulate, to ensure that the externalities that you are creating are internalized within the broader picture.
Yes. I know part of your reform was, turning around about 500 parking stations.
Yes.
And also reforming the management of cooperative societies.
Correct. Yes.
At the farmer level.
Yeah.
But this is definitely not going to be a walk in the park, because these are private entities.
Correct.
And here you have the government. There's so much that the government can do.
Sure.
But ultimately, this goes back to the management, which is decided by farmers anyway.
Yeah.
So have you made any inroad on that?
Well, what we have done, and again, and explains again why Kieyah was very successful. Obviously, there's a lot of pressure in this day and age of digital age, where the information is becoming readily available. Is that it's become very difficult for or easy to hold some of these cooperative societies to account. Like for instance now, if the coffee is sold, like that Kieyah, it is public knowledge, so everybody knows. So the shenanigans that used to play is being minimized to some extent. The other thing, the farmer are also looking, comparing. I know like this Kieyah, sale has actually impacted most of the union, because they're asking, how can Kieyah do better than us? How can they pay 122 and you guys are paying 50 shillings? So that has started putting a little bit of pressure. There are some other reform within the cooperative, which again is also changing the number of term that chairman or the official can be re-elected. But I agree with you, it takes a little bit of while. But the best solution, O'Brien, is to really sort out the inefficient that the government can be able to do, and let the other thing sort themselves out.
I have seen Agriculture Cabinet Secretary Peter Munya. He has been very aggressive. Going to the ground and urging farmers. Look here, you need to elect people of integrity, people with some level of education qualification, because ultimately these are the people who are going to make decisions on your behalf. And if you make bad decisions, then you are ultimately going to get bad results. But apart from that, do you think there is anything more that can be done?
Well, obviously I think the law is in my opinion probably the best way, because what is also happening, Brian, that you are now saying the other side of the coin, it's who sustain these bad leaders. I told you the symbiotic relationship between the millers and the marketers is what actually for me has been the source of the problem. You have the millers who want to make sure certain officials stay there because they will be guaranteed to get their coffee. And this is also being fueled because our coffee is very small. And you have the milling capacity of almost 90% of our milling capacity is idle. We have a capacity of about 450,000 metric tons. We're only doing 10%. So there's a lot of pressure for coffee anywhere. But I agree with you. One of the drawback is, again, and particularly for the small scale farmer, they are unable to hold these guys to account. Even the voting process is done. If you happen to go to some of this general meeting for this corporate, it's like war. Because there are people who have strong vested in it. In fact, I someone who told me that you almost have like over 5, even to 10 million for campaigning.
To be a director.
Oh, yeah. Because you know what it does. But you see now, the farmer have started now realize that, and again, this is as a result of coffee starting, fetching good prices. Because if the coffee is paying well, you are more likely to be affected, whoever be, and you're more likely to pay attention. But when the prices are very bad, you're just like, you know what? The sad thing that that I think is that I would like to highlight here, which was attributed to the previous law. O'Brien, I told you our coffee is gold. But most of even our coffee farmers don't have an idea. They have never tasted their coffee.
And especially the good grades.
The good
top grades.
They've never tasted it. So you are taking here a gold and you're going to give it to somebody else. And again, with the new legal framework, we have actually told all these cooperative unions have to digitize
their processes.
Their processes, yeah. It's in the law. It's a legal framework. They are given a year to make sure they have really digitized, so that the farmer can be able to track their coffee. Once you take it to the cooperative, it's weighed, you're given a receipt. They can tell you when it's taken to milling, what is the milling losses, what is the classifications, and once the coffee is sold, you should be able to really get it that information.
Prof, before I let you go, I mean, you've mentioned Kieyah Society for about 7 times now.
Correct, yeah.
What is so unique about it?
Oh, it's historical. It's never happened. And I'm saying this, Brian, because I was part of this process. I'm midwife this process. And the beauty for me was to hear on the other side a Korean proposing a price. The officials of KBC on the other side. It was a Zoom. They would call the farmers, what do you think about this? Is this a good price? Yes, should we commit? That has never happened. They used to take their coffee, give it to somebody else. You have no idea when this money will be paid, and you don't even know how much.
That one is decided by...
It's decided, and you see now everybody knows. They know how much everybody has been paid. The farmers are aware about it.
Now the process is participatory.
Precisely.
Farmers, they have a say in how much we want to sell our coffee and to who.
Precisely. And the reason being, again, Brian, coffee is not a public good. It's a private good. And the God who gave us right to life also gave us some liberty. And one of those liberty is to own a piece of property. And it's protected in the Constitution. There's a presumption that usually goes around that these farmers don't understand what they are going. Just the picture that you painted. They have no clue idea. They cannot even market. But my question is, what is so difficult marketing? Taking your food to the... You cannot spend so much money growing it, right? And then somebody assume we cannot be able to sell it.
But these farmers, they're always marketing things. I mean, they go to... They cut their bananas, they take them to the markets,
Precisely.
They negotiate for prices.
Yes.
They do the same for tomatoes, they do the same for vegetables.
Why cannot do it on coffee?
What is so hard about doing that for coffee?
And from a very simple economic, principle, there's no way Brian will sell something below your production cost. And even our grandmother knows that. When they call to the market, they know they will not sell below what they have needed. It will be rational. So again, the historical sense about this is the first time this guy negotiated. The same Korean investors coming back here, he want to buy. And by the way, Korea can buy all our coffee.
All of it.
Their consumption per year is about 175,000 metric tons.
Our production is 50,000 metric tons.
So they can come and buy And by the way, Korea is a very unique market that is emerging. That we need to take advantage. And my thesis and my thinking for going to South Korea was that let's get buyers into our markets. And that's what it does. You create competition. If a farmer chooses to take their coffee in Europe, so be it. If they choose to take to China, you negotiate. But the biggest achievement of Brian that I think the president has really done for and I remember when he appointed me, he told me, Prof, as chairman, I want the farmer to be paid fairly and to be paid on time.
Before I let you go, because I mean, it took us about 30 to 35 years, to destroy the coffee subsector in this country. But is it going to take us that period of time before now we can start realizing the benefits or the low-hanging fruits of the coffee value chain?
No, I don't think so. I think what's happening is that one of the underlying reason why that happened is that because the owner of this particular good had always been in darkness. But you see, like now, they are empowered. They know who to call. They know where to ask. And And the best thing to me would happen is that, these guys become their own advocates. They know where the shoe pitches, and they can be able to demand, those things. So my expectation, Brian, is that even as a country, we have been discussing about industrialization, manufacturing, and there's no better place to start in agro-processing. If we sort coffee, okay, I can tell you the way we went about these coffee reforms can be a case study for tea, it can be a case study for sugar, and you need to take control again on those products.
Good. Prof, I think I have to let you go.
Thank you.
To go now and enjoy your cup of coffee.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much indeed for your input, and of course we wish you all the best and look forward for that time when the glory of coffee shall be reinforced.
Okay. Thank you for having me here.
Asante sana. Go and enjoy your coffee.
Thank you.
Look here, I mean, you see, it's such a shame that as a country we produce about 40 to 45,000 metric tons of coffee, but our production, our local consumption is about 5% of these. You cannot compare these with our neighbors called Ethiopia, where they consume almost 50% of their coffee. Unless and until that time we become more serious consumers of our own product, and I'm talking about coffee, then that's the time that we're gonna say, yes, we've made it. Coffee is our gold. It has always been our black gold. It can always go back to its former glory if we all put our efforts together and help in this process. We have been having this conversation around the coffee culture in Kenya. I encourage you to take more coffee, even right now. Our next conversation will revolve around innovation and, of course, SMEs embracing the concept of innovation in their day-to-day businesses. Stay right here, because that conversation is something you don't want to miss.